Hi, everybody. This is Mrs. Pearson, your elementary ELL teacher. Today, we're going to look at Chapter 11 of Bud Not Buddy and its vocabulary words 1 to 8. For this lesson, you will need a pencil and a piece of paper or a journal, and you're going to divide the paper into 3 equal parts or thirds, 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to write numbers 1 to 8. If you don't have your paper and pencil, push pause, get your materials, and then when you're ready to join me, push play. So for each number, you're going to write the vocabulary word or phrase. In the second column, you're going to write a synonym. And a synonym is a word that means the same, just like combine is a synonym for mix. If you don't catch a synonym or have time to write a short definition, you can always write the word a second time. And in the third column, I want you to draw a quick picture or sketch to help you remember that word or phrase. At the end of this lesson, you are also going to use your pencil to answer this comprehension question for chapter 11. And it's how does the author describe Bud's physical appearance, his external character traits? And you're going to say the author describes Bud's appearance as. Another way he describes Bud's external traits is, and then how does the author describe Hermione Calloway's personality so far? His internal character traits. So you'll say the author describes Hermione Calloway's personality as. Another way he describes Herman's internal character is. So here's our learning targets. I can use pictures and context clues to help me understand important words from Chapter 11 of Bud Not Buddy. Our other learning target is I can analyze and write about characters in the story using the vocabulary, figurative language, or imagery in the text. So success criteria. You may say, Ms. Pearson, how on earth can I be successful at reaching those 2 learning targets? Well, here are our steps to success. I will, number 1, write down each vocabulary word, a synonym or short definition, and draw a quick sketch. Number 2, I will listen and follow along to each quote from the chapter. Look for either the vocabulary word or the figurative language example. And number 3, I will answer the comprehension question in writing using the figurative language or imagery examples to describe the characters. And we're going to do this all together. Okay, character traits. When you look at a character in a story, you look on the outside, the character's physical traits, what we can see, like hair color, eye color, height, clothing, size, or facial features. Or you might look at how the character is on the inside, their personality traits, what we learn from actions, words, and thoughts. So what the character's thoughts are, what they're thinking, what the character's words are, what they say, what the character's feelings are, how they feel, and what the character's actions are. What do they do? And what do those actions, words, feelings, and thoughts tell you about the person, how the character is on the inside? So we're going to look at Bud Caldwell, and you're going to tell me what his physical traits are, what he looks like. And we're going to look at Hermione Calloway, and we're going to look at his personality traits, what he's like on the inside. External, outside character traits. External character traits are things you can see when you look at the person. Things you can see with your eyes, like that girl is pretty, or that girl has pigtails, or that boy is a redhead, or that girl has straight hair, that girl has curly hair. That man is a male. That woman is a female. That ape is big. That monkey is small. That monkey is dry, but that monkey is wet. That monkey is tall, but that monkey is short. And that girl has long hair. For some reason, it says short. And then the other girl has short hair. And that person was wearing a striped shirt, whereas the other person was wearing a plain shirt. So, what they look like on the outside. Internal character traits, internal, inside character traits. Internal character traits are based on a person's feelings, thoughts, words, and actions. How they feel, what they're thinking, what they say, and what they do. So here's some positive character traits: kind, loyal, responsible, brave, persistent. Here's some negative character traits: bossy, rude, sneaky, mean, lazy. So in this chapter and all throughout the book, Bud uses a lot of figurative language when he talks, and also other characters do. So figurative language versus literal language. Figurative language would be he ran like the wind to describe this video, or literal language would be he ran fast. So listen closely. One type of figurative language is simile. A simile is a comparison of two things using the words like or as. Here's your example. His face lit up like a light bulb when he figured out the math problem. Simile. So we're going to see a simile in this example. Number one, write the word paltry. Paltry. And paltry is going to be a word to describe Bud. So you could write Bud and an equal sign, and you could write paltry, and you'll see that in the quote. Paltry means a very small amount, insignificant. A very small amount, insignificant. So here's an example of what paltry might look like. Very small. So here is the quote that Lefty Lewis said to his daughter when he was describing Bud. Well, he was walking all the way from Grand Rapids to Flint. It looks like he provided a pretty paltry meal for every mosquito on the way. Lefty Lewis. So he says that Bud, here's the picture of Bud. Bud looks like a paltry meal, or a very small, insignificant meal for mosquitoes. So Bud was so skinny and so tiny that even Bud wasn't big enough to be a good meal for mosquitoes, because mosquitoes bite us. And even for the mosquitoes, he was a paltry meal. So make sure you write paltry, small amount, and also make sure you write the word Bud next to this because it describes Bud. You could also write paltry meal for every mosquito on the way. So that's a direct quote that you could put in your comprehension question answer. So if you need to, push pause to write that quote. Bud was a paltry meal for every mosquito on the way. And when you're done writing, push play. All right, number two, skinny as a rail, extremely thin, no body fat. So again, this is describing Bud. So I would write Bud's name and then the phrase skinny as a rail. And then Lefty Lewis's daughter, the woman said, "Papa, look at his legs. This boy's as skinny as a rail." As skinny as a rail. Bud is as skinny as a handrail or a train rail. Look how skinny they are. So make sure that you write skinny as a rail The synonym could be thin, and I would write Bud's name next to it. For number 3, tatters. Tatters. This also describes Bud, so you can write Bud's name again next to number 3, tatters. Tatters. Tatters means torn clothing, or a synonym could be shredded. Tatters means torn clothing or shredded. So here's our pictures, and here's our quote. And this is the woman, or Mrs. Sleet, who was the daughter of Lefty Lewis. And look at the condition of the boy's clothes. The boy meaning Bud. Everything is either too small for him or almost in tatters. So he wears torn clothing. His clothing looks torn or shredded. So Bud's clothes were in tatters. Tatters. All right, metaphor. Metaphor is another type of figurative language. A metaphor is a comparison of two things. You do not use the words like or as in a metaphor. You say they are exactly this. The racer was a lightning rod coming across the finish line. The racer was a lightning rod coming across the finish line. Hyperbole is another type of figurative language. A hyperbole is an extreme exaggeration used for emphasis, like there is a ton of food on the table. All right, number 4, puny. Puny, also used to describe Bud. Puny, small, skinny, and weak. Small, skinny, and weak. And here's our quote. Lefty Lewis said, "Yeah, he's puny. Good thing his legs don't touch when he walks. Because if those two twigs got to rubbing against one another, he'd have a fire going on in no time." So you could write Bud next to puny. A synonym could be skinny. Bud's legs are like two twigs or are two twigs. So that's a metaphor. And then here, the hyperbole is if the two twigs got to rubbing together, if his legs got to rubbing together, there'd be a fire in no time. So that's a hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. All right, so let's move on. Number 5, knickers. Knickers. Knickers are short pants, usually worn by boys during the Great Depression. Knickers are short pants, usually worn by boys during the Great Depression. So there's Bud's knickers. Here's some more examples of knickers. A lot of golfers used to wear knickers as well. All right, and here's the quote. "Shucks, they'd taken off my knickers when they put me in this bed. Now I was going to have to pretend I was asleep even longer, at least until I could figure a way out of being so embarrassed." All right, so put Bud next to knickers. He wears knickers, which are short pants, and they were commonly worn during the Great Depression. Bud wore knickers. Here's another type of figurative language, idiom. An idiom is a saying that has a completely different meaning than the actual words themselves. It's raining cats and dogs, so take your umbrella. Idiom. So we're going to see an idiom right now for number 6, spitting image. Spitting image. So write spitting image. If you are described as the spitting image of someone, it means you look similar to or the same as that person. So there's a boy who looks the spitting image of his father, but then he's also spitting some water at his face. So there's a father and son. They're the spitting image of each other. They look exactly alike. And there's some twins. They're the spitting image. And spitting image is an idiom. So here is our quote. This was the best news I had had all day. My face nearly split in half from my giant smile. Yes, sir, folks say I'm the spitting image of my old man or my father. Old man would be my father. So people thought Bud looked like or was the spitting image of his father. He looked like Harmony Calloway. Someone told him that. And he was so happy that his face nearly split in half from smiling. That's also figurative language. All right, number 7. Harmony Calloway is described as a big fish. And a big fish means someone important or influential. They influence people, like a social media influencer influences people online. Harmony Calloway back in the day was a big fish, very important. So here is the quote. Everyone in Grand Rapids does. I'm surprised you can't remember him. He's quite a big fish here. So someone is saying that Harmony Calloway is quite a big fish in Grand Rapids. That means he's someone important. Harmony Calloway is a very important person, or VIP. All right, number 8, no nonsense. No nonsense is a sensible and serious person, practical. This describes Harmony Calloway. So you could write Herman E. Calloway or HEC, short for Herman E. Calloway. He's no nonsense. Which means a sensible and serious person, practical. Lefty Lewis said, "Now you stop being so judgmental. Herman's got a reputation for being no nonsense, not mean." So Lefty Lewis said, "Now you stop being so judgmental. Herman's got a reputation for being no nonsense, not mean." So Herman E. Calloway is no nonsense. He's sensible, he's serious, he's practical. But he doesn't have a reputation for being mean. All right, time to check your work. For chapter 11, words 1 through 8. Number 1 is paltry, a very small amount, insignificant. And you should write B for Bud next to that so you can remember that was how they described Bud. He was a paltry meal for mosquitoes. 2, skinny as a rail, extremely thin, no body fat, skinny as a rail. Also put B or BUD, Bud, next to skinny as a rail. 3, tatters. This also describes Bud. His clothes were in tatters. I would put B or Bud next to tatters. Puny, that also describes Bud, small, skinny, and weak. Puny. So if you need to, push pause. Make sure you've written paltry, a small amount, skinny as a rail, thin, tatters, shredded, and puny, which means skinny. So, and next to all 4 of those, put B for Bud because these all describe Bud. I've given you 4 different physical characteristic descriptions of Bud. And then after you make sure you've had all 4 words and their synonym and a quick sketch, push play. All right, number 5, knickers. Who wore knickers? Bud. Short pants usually worn by boys in the Great Depression. Knickers. So I would put B next to knickers because Bud wore knickers. 6, someone said Bud was the spitting image of his father, who he said was Herman E. Calloway. You look similar or the same as that person. Spitting image. So put B next to spitting image. And finally, the last two will be for Herman E. Calloway. So you could write H for Herman E. Calloway or HEC. A big fish, someone important or influential. And 8, no nonsense. Oh, and I don't have the right word. I apologize. No nonsense doesn't mean communication. It means sensible. So, right, no nonsense means sensible or practical. So, push pause. Make sure you have all 4 words here. Knicker, short pants, spitting image, similar or the same. A big fish, someone important or influential, and no nonsense. Don't look at that definition, it's wrong. It's sensible or practical. So, knickers is Bud, spitting image is Bud, a big fish is Herman E. Calloway, and no nonsense is Herman E. Calloway. So, after you have these 4 words written down with the synonym and the quick sketch, push play. Okay, now it's time to answer this question. How does the author describe Bud's physical appearance, external character traits? So the author describes Bud's appearance as, so you can write that. So push pause and finish that sentence. How did the author describe Bud's appearance? You could have a long list of things. The author describes Bud's appearance as, and tell me one way. And then another way he describes Bud's external character traits is, and tell me another way. So push pause, make sure you answer this part of the question. And when you're finished, push play. Now, how does the author describe Herman E. Calloway's personality so far, his internal character traits? So for the next part of the question, you can say the author describes Herman E. Calloway's personality as, and then another way he describes Herman's internal character is. So make sure you answer that portion of the question, push pause, answer those 2 things, and push play when you're finished. Using your notes, using the vocabulary that we just reviewed. All right, at the top, I want you to reflect, give a reflection grade. I can analyze and write about characters in the story using vocabulary, figurative language, or imagery in the text. Would you give yourself a 4? I could teach this lesson. I easily wrote all the vocabulary words, synonyms, and drew a picture for each. I answered the comprehension questions with 5 or more words or examples to describe the characters. Or would you give yourself a 3? I wrote all the vocabulary words, synonyms, and drew a picture for each. I also answered the comprehension question with 3 to 4 words or examples to describe the characters. Or would you give yourself a 2? I wrote most of the vocabulary words, synonyms, and drew a picture for each. I answered the comprehension question with 1 or 2 words and examples to describe the characters. Or 1, I wrote some of the vocabulary words and drew a picture for each and answered part of the comprehension question. How do you think you did? 4, 3, 2, or 1? All right, everybody. Thank you for doing this lesson with me for chapter 11. Have a great day.